Greetings everyone and welcome back to my channel. This is July the IT guy. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm back here with another Cisco Packet Tracer lab, lab 10.1.4 on how to configure initial router settings. So let's go ahead and take a look at the objectives. Part 1 is verify the default router configuration. Part 2, configure and verify the initial router configuration. And then part 3, save the running configuration file. Alright, so a little bit of the background in this activity. You will perform basic router configuration tasks. You will secure access to the CLI and console port using encrypted and plaintext passwords. You will also configure messages for users who are logging into the router. These banners warned unauthorized users that access is prohibited. And finally, you will verify and save your running configuration. Alright, so the instructions here show part 1, verify the default router configuration. Alright, so step 1, establish a console connection to router 1. Alright, so step A is choose a console cable from the available connections. Alright, let's go over to our lab. And let's go and select our console port right here, router 1. Alright, so let's go and input the console port and then select the RS-232 port. As indicated here, B would be click PCA and select RS-232. We've done that. C, click R1 and select the console port. We've done that. Now D, click PCA, desktop tab, and then the terminal. Alright, so let's go over to our PC, desktop, and here's our terminal. And we see we have the default configurations, 9600 bits per second, 8 data bits, parity is none, stop bits is 1, and flow control is none. So let's go ahead and click OK. And there we have it. We are on the terminal. So let's go ahead and press enter. And as you can see, it shows here that we are in the router. Alright, so now let's go in step 2, enter privilege mode and examine the current configuration. You can access all the router commands from privilege exec mode. However, because many of the privilege commands configure operating parameters, privilege access should be password protected to prevent unauthorized use. Alright, so enter privilege exec mode by entering the enable command. Alright, let's go ahead and do that. Enable. Alright, so notice that the prompt changed in the configuration to reflect privilege exec mode. Okay, we can see that there. Alright, B, enter the show running config command. Alright, let's do that. Show running config, enter. And we see the current running configuration. So let's go ahead and click space, 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 space. Alright. And let's go to the beginning of it. So where is it? Okay, here we go. Host name. There we go. All right. So what is the router's host name? Okay, so we see here it is router. How many fast Ethernet interfaces does the router have? All right, let's take a look here. This one's gigabit, gigabit serial. All right, so fast Ethernet interface 0/10. We have a total of fast Ethernet 1, 2, 3, 4 interfaces. Alright, how many gigabit Ethernet interfaces does the router have? We can take a look here again at the running config. It is 2 gigabit Ethernet 0/0 and 0/1. Alright, how many serial interfaces does the router have? Alright, looking at the running config again, we have 2. That's serial 0/0/0/0 and 0/0/0/1. So that'll be 2 interfaces. And then what is the range of values shown for the VTY lines? Alright, let's scroll down and take a look here. Okay, so we have line VT1 0 to 4, so that's 4 sessions. Alright, so display the current contents on NVRAM. The command would be show startup config. Alright, startup config is not present. Alright, so why does the router respond with the startup config is not present message? This would be obvious. The router hasn't yet been configured. All right, so part 2, let's go ahead and move on. Configure and verify the initial router configuration. To configure parameters on a router, you may be required to move between various configuration modes. Notice how the prompt changes as you navigate through the iOS configuration modes. Alright, so step 1, configure the initial settings on R1. Note, if you have difficulty remembering the commands, refer to the content for this topic. The commands are the same as you configure on a switch. Alright, so let's move on, and this will be, let's configure R1 as the host name. Alright, so that command would be, well, actually we need to do the configure terminal to enter global configuration mode, and now we can start configuring. So host name is the command, and the name would be R1. There we go. Configure messages of the day to reflect unauthorized access is strictly prohibited. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So that command would simply be banner MOTD, and then let's just copy the message, and let's do quotes and paste it here, close quotes. All right, there we go. Encrypt all plain text passwords. Use the following password. So for privilege exec, unencrypted would be Cisco. All right, so this would be simply enable password. This would be Cisco. And then privilege exec encrypted. So this will be the encrypted password. In this case, we will have to input the command enable secret. And this password is, it's a secret. Or you know what, just to make sure that we get it correct, let's just copy and paste. Enter. And then the console would be let me in. Let's go and input line console. In this case would be 0 to enter console configuration line, and password it is let me in. Enter, and then log in to ensure that it's configured. And then let's do exit. All right. Step 2, verify the initial settings on R1. So verify the initial settings by viewing the configuration for R1. All right, so again, how do we do that? What command did we use? We just simply do the show running config. All right, so let's do that. Exit from the global config, and let's do show running config command. And there we have it. So we have all the configurations. We have the banner MOT, which is indicating unauthorized access is strictly prohibited. Line console password is let me in. All right. So all right, now exit the current console session until you see the following message. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So exit. There we go. R1 console is now available. And let's press enter to get started. All right, you should see the following message, which we are seeing. Unauthorized access is strictly prohibited. User access verification. So it's prompting us to input the password. In this case, it's a secret. Okay, actually it is the let me in password. And there we have it. So we are back on the router through the console session. So let's take a look. What's the next step here? All right, so it's asking us why should every router have a message of the day MOT banner? We can simply indicate that this would be every router should have an MOT banner to provide legal notification that only authorized users are permitted to access, which is often a requirement for legal prosecution. All right. So then, if you're not prompt for a password before reaching the user exec prompt, what console line command did you forget to configure? In this case will be the login command on the console line, which instructs the router to actually prompt the password you set. All right, so then the next one is why would the enabled secret password allow access to the privileged exec mode and the enabled password no longer be valid? Alright, so the enabled secret password takes precedence over the enabled password for security reasons. If both are configured, the router defaults to the more secure hashed secret. So there we go. If you configure any more passwords on the router, are displayed in the configuration file as plain text or in the encrypted form. Explain. By default, additional passwords are displayed as plain text unless you have enabled the service password encryption command, which applies a basic level of encryption to all passwords in the configuration file. Alright, so part 3, let's go ahead and move on. Well, actually, so it is asking us to encrypt the password, so let's go ahead and do that before we forget. So let's do enable. Let's see what's the password here. All right, so that'll be it's a secret. Now let's do config t, and let's go ahead and configure that service password encryption to encrypt all passwords. All right, perfect. Now let's move on to the next section. So part 3, save the running config file. So save the configuration file to the NVRAM. You have configured the initial settings for R1. Now back up the running configuration file to NVRAM to ensure that the changes made are not lost and the system is rebooted or loses power. Alright, so what command did you enter to save the configuration NVRAM? So that's simply, the command would be copy. Let's exit from config and let's enter copy running config startup config. Alright, so that's completed. What is the shortest ambiguous version of this command? And again, it's simply startup copy running config startup config. And then step 2 is optional. Save the startup config file to flash. Alright, so although you will be learning more about managing the flash storage in a router in later chapters, you may be interested to know that as an added backup procedure, you can save your startup configuration file to flash. By default, the router still loads the startup configuration from NVRAM, but if NVRAM becomes corrupt, you can restore the startup configuration by copying it over from flash. Complete the following step to save the startup configuration to flash. Alright, so A, examine the contents of flash using the show flash command. So let's go ahead and do that. Show flash. There we go. We see that there are 3 files listed. So let's take a look here. What are those files for? And let's see here. Explain contents of flash using the show flash command. How many files are currently stored in the flash? We've said that there are 3. Alright, which of these files would you guess is the iOS or the iOS image file? In this case, I would go with the .bin. The file ending in the .bin extension in the Cisco iOS image. Why do you think this file is the iOS image? The file identified as the iOS image is because it has a significantly larger file size. As you can see, the length of the file is larger than the others, and it uses the .bin extension. Alright, so here we see it, typical for executable system firmware. So this would be the iOS image file. And then lastly, copy startup config flash. All right, so let's do that last command here. Copy startup config flash. Let's press enter. All right, so there we go. It looks like we have the 100% completion rate. So let's check our results. And we have completed this lab. We have all checks completed. So there we have it. So thanks again for joining me today on another Packet Tracer lab. Again, I just like to emphasize that it is very important and essential to partake on these labs if you are on a quest or journey to acquire your Cisco CCNA certification. Again, like and subscribe, and I thank every one of you guys for joining me today. Hope everyone has a great day. Until the next video.